Good evening. Today we are recording our Self-Empowered Healing Journey workshop. So welcome, and I'm excited that you want to learn everything you can do on your own to actually trigger healing going on in your body. We're going to review some objectives first, and I know that everyone wants to know the details of what and how. However, we're going to focus on why first. What is motivating you to do this? Because that is really what's going to keep you going on this journey, is what that motivation is. We will talk about the specific steps to build your own unique self-empowered healing process, because it is unique to everyone. And although we call it self-empowered, that doesn't mean that you don't get additional help. All of us need coaches, guides, people with specific expertise. And so we'll give you some guidelines on where to get help in your journey. And if you're interested in receiving the slides for this so that you don't have to take notes, please email me at contact@drjp.com. That's contact@doctorjp.com. And you can get a copy of the slides by asking to be one of our free members. The membership site is where we keep these teaching videos. You will need something to write on because we will have some experiential exercises during this. And so whether that is paper or your tablet, go grab that so that we can get started. So the first thing that we're going to do is an exercise to help gather your energy from all the places that it's scattered right now, so that you can come into the room where you are and be fully present to get the most out of this. Please put your cell phone on off or do not disturb so that you can really focus on what we're doing here. Sit preferably with your feet flat on the floor, hands resting comfortably in your lap or on the arms of a chair. Allow your eyes to gently close or just rest. Fill your chest with air and then exhale through your mouth. You might want to try that again. A big inhale, and maybe even let some noise out when you let it go. Begin to feel your body resting on whatever surface you are on. Notice what your feet are touching, the feeling of clothing against your skin, whatever is supporting your buttocks. Gather your scattered energy into the room you're in right now. All the places that your energy has been all day long, bring it right here and now. Allow your attention to come from your heart area rather than your head. What do you notice about your internal environment when you're centered in your heart? What do you notice about your external environment when you're centered in your heart? Can you imagine what it'd be like to see and hear and maybe even taste and smell and feel from your heart center? I invite you to feel the life force within you, that which wants you to grow and prosper. Allow it to expand into every cell, from your toes to the top of your head, balancing your body to thrive and flourish. We'll pause for a moment to allow you to soak up the knowledge that well-being is the birthright of every cell in your body, and how to heal is already programmed into it. Every cell knows just what to take in and what to excrete to keep itself healthy. All the systems of your body are connected to a master regulator, a type of thermostat that helps to keep you in balance. Allow yourself to trust that an innate intelligence manages all the parts of your well-being. Now gently bring your attention back to sitting wherever you are. Take a deep breath, and as you let it out, exhale into this present moment. All right, so hopefully you are a little bit more centered here. And I really want to expand on this concept of that which wants you to grow and prosper. It actually wants your attention. It does an awful lot of things without you thinking about it at all. You know, our hair grows, our nail grows, our food digests, and we don't think about it at all. If we have a wound, it heals itself without you concentrating on how to make that happen. And so we want to actually bring our attention to some things that need to be healed, because that is asking for our attention. That's why it's not simply doing it on its own. So I want to share with you my own story, because it illustrates how I got into this whole concept of self-empowered healing. I've been doing this for over 25 years. So I basically had a very serious neck problem. You don't need to be a radiologist to see some of the arrows in these pictures. Mine looked most closely like the last one, letter C there, only I had actually 3 bumps like that pinching into my spinal cord. And I was told that if I didn't have urgent surgery, that this would cause me to be a paraplegic or quadriplegic. So of course I was terrified. I was actually on disability at the time. I was in very intense pain and also had severe numbness and weakness going all the way down my arm into my fingers. And because the pain was so severe, I described 10 out of 10 pain to be taking up your entire consciousness. And this was about 9 out of 10. I couldn't sit. I couldn't sit even for 60 seconds. So I couldn't go anywhere in a car, and I couldn't drive because I couldn't pay attention to other cars and things like that. And this idea of ending up as a quadriplegic was probably the most terrifying thing that could ever happen to me. And this was 25 years ago. It was much harder to find alternative medicine sorts of things at the time. And I actually had people coming to my house doing things like Reiki and craniosacral therapy because I could not ride to go and get treatments. And I was completely alone by myself one day, literally lying on the ground, because I could either stand or lie on the ground, not even sit. And I was listening to a tape someone had given me by Carolyn Myss, MYSS. You may have heard of her. She's written some great books that talk about energy anatomy. And she said that the reason that people don't heal, a reason that people don't heal, is that they need to forgive. And I'm thinking, I'm a pretty good person. I don't hold grudges. Who do I need to forgive? And I had a blinding flash on a man who had tried to kill me many years before, whom I always hoped rotted in hell. And at that instant, I chose to not only forgive him, but thank him for coming into my life, because I saw how he had put into motion everything that brought me to exactly that instant where I was lying on the ground. And instantaneously, the pain was gone, the numbness and weakness went out of my arm, and I sat up, and I have been able to do everything I want to do ever since then. I kayak, I bike, I hike, I lift weights, I'm very active. And something happened to me in that instant where I knew there were 2 things that I hadn't known before. And one was that there is something much bigger than me out there, and that I'm connected to it, and that it's actually paying attention. And the second was that there was an awful lot about healing that they didn't teach me in medical school. So I've spent the last 25 years finding out all of these things that you probably will not hear from other doctors, or you'll hear in very abbreviated versions. But there are ways to go into this in depth to change even very serious medical conditions. So we get a lot of negative cultural health messages. When we're young, we think we can do whatever we want, and then things start to break down in middle age. And so we go to a doctor and we get a pill or a surgery to fix it. And then when we get older, we blame everything on the calendar and we expect old age to be very bad. And we are not taught to take personal responsibility. We use a scientific method that describes everything as a machine or a clockwork body, which isn't actually very accurate for the way it works together, because you are an entire ecosystem. And we're going to talk about that ecosystem much more and how all the pieces of it fit together. So we will focus on the ecosystem as body, mind, emotions, and spirit. Almost everything that you hear about health, whether that's from alternative practitioners or MDs, DOs, is focusing on that body aspect, the chemistry, the physics, electromagnetism, genes, your physical environment, all of which are very important. However, they often ignore these other three areas. We're going to talk a lot about how incredibly powerful your mind is to actually direct your body to turn on that healing. We're going to talk a lot about emotions because they are energy in motion and they have the power to initiate your healing and keep it going. And then we're going to talk about that connection to the greater whole, which I call spirit. The really cool thing that my research over the last 25 years has shown, there is actually abundant science saying that all of these areas have a very big impact on your health. And you might simply just not hear about them because people talk about those sort of nuts and bolts things about the body and not these other things. But there is actually very good science that these things make a difference. So I want to have you look at 4 core beliefs that I got from a guy who wrote a book called You Are Not Broken. I love that title because most of our medical system wants you to think that you are broken and needs them to fix you. And this is not a very empowering idea. And so we use the idea of, does a thought, whatever thought is coming into your mind, does that empower you or does it make you feel drained? That's a very simple way to tap in to your own self-knowledge, your own intuition, and determine what is right for you to do and what may not be the best path for you, rather than blaming things like finances, blaming a virus or pathogen or chemical or something outside of yourself as making you sick, saying that your relationship doesn't work and that's why you can't do what you need to do. So we're going to use empowering thoughts. And these 4 I do find are absolutely necessary. Choosing to be the predominant creative force in your own life, owning your own power. And we're going to talk more and more about how to own that power. Choosing to love your life. This is actually a choice. Rather than expecting life to show up outside of you and then be happy, when we can generate that love for ourselves, love for our lives inside of ourselves, you'll find that your life starts to show up to confirm that for you. You can choose your own health and vitality. And I'm talking about even with very serious diseases such as stage 4 cancer or multiple sclerosis or even broken bones. You can choose health and vitality. And figuring out what is your true nature and purpose is part of how you then build that life that you love. So often we hear about the latest, greatest medical whatever. And there are really wonderful things that healthcare can do for us now. My goal is to help you never need those things. We want to turn on the healing inside of ourselves so that you never have to do that. Doesn't mean that you can't use all those wonderful things that have been provided to us by modern science. Not saying that at all. Employing your mind, using that energy into motion of emotions, calling on your spirit can make things like chemotherapy work better. So, and again, there's science proving that this is true. So we're going to look again at your whole self as what is really health. So a big part of this is your mental attitude about whether you feel like you are a victim or you own your own empowerment. Feeling like you are a victim, XYZ, a car wreck or a workers' comp injury or anything in your life is what caused your problem, disempowers you. It doesn't say, I have the power in me to heal me. It blames something outside of myself. And we don't want to have this idea that you are to blame for creating the problem, because that's just self-judgment. And that's not actually true either. Stuff happens. Life is hard. It's hard for almost everyone. And when stuff happens, when we decide how to respond to what's going on, that's what gives us the power. So we're not doing any blaming of the victim here, and noticing your self-talk can help us to get clues to whether you are putting your power outside of yourself or owning it inside of yourself. So we focus a lot on the three things that are actually under your control. And people can argue about what is or is not under our control a lot. These three things are the only ones that I've really found consistently there's no argument with. What you put into your body, what you consume, whether that's medications or water or alcohol or what type of food, that is under your control. What you do with your body, whether that's exercise or sports or what your environment is in your home, that is under your control. And what we do with our minds, including our attitudes and beliefs, is incredibly powerful. And we'll talk more about that. So I said at the beginning that we want to talk about why. Why do you want to be healthy? Not simply, I need to cure XYZ problem. I don't want to take medication anymore. This pain is limiting my life. There's all kinds of reasons. So for instance, let's just say you have some kind of a bad pain, whether it's headaches or back pain or something else. And that is causing you to limit your life so that you can't really do what you want to do. So I would like you to think about the things that you would do if I had a magic wand and suddenly could make this go away. So rather than focusing on fixing or getting rid of a certain symptom or diagnosis, think about how you would feel if this wasn't in your life and you were able to do what you want to do in whatever way that is, whether that's take dance lessons or get a different job or start your own business, spend more time with your kids, whatever it is. So you want to have the emotion of how that feels to you. This is the place where we create. We often think that we have to start with the nitty gritty. Oh, I need to eat this way, or I have to do these exercises, blah, blah, blah. But if we actually go to how does that thing feel? So let's just say your pain is suddenly gone. How do you feel? Do you feel relief? Do you feel joy? Do you feel eager to go do the tasks that you've been wanting to do? What does it feel like? And I encourage you to feel that not only in your emotional sense, your emotional mind, but how does it feel in your body? Where does it feel? Do you feel like you can move better? Is there a sound that goes with it, a color, a taste, a smell? Maybe you want to be working more in your garden and smelling your flowers. And I put this little note about the 1815 rule because a lot of people are not aware that they are actually not using their emotions to make decisions. Studies show that people make decisions 85% based upon emotions and only 15% on logic. Now we go out and we search the internet and we talk to our friends and we get all kinds of recommendations and we make that logic, that 15%, convince us why we should or should not do something. And the truth is we're actually doing it for these emotional reasons. So I want to stop here just for a moment and have you think about your deepest heart's desire when you get to whatever the goal is that you're focusing on. Okay, so hopefully we've planted a seed. You may want to do more with this on your own time. So we're going to give you a moment to practice now. And if you didn't come up with exactly how you're supposed to feel, you can start writing down what your life would be like without this condition. And I'm going to give you an example here. We're going to use headaches. Maybe those headaches are making you wonder if you have a brain tumor. Are you at risk of a stroke? Does it make you feel like I'm just sick all the time? Would you be able to focus better if you didn't have pain? Would you be able to attend social and work events without fear of this condition interfering? Would it be great to have less doctor visits, fewer lab tests, and so forth? Less worries about how insurance is going to reimburse you for these things. So how does your life feel? Who are you without this condition? So I'm going to pause here for just a minute and allow you to do some writing. Who would you be? Who would you be without this condition? Who am I without this condition? What stands between you and this greater version of yourself? What do you let stop you? Time, money, lack of knowledge, any limitation whatsoever. Okay, so we're going to come back into the room. Again, you may want to just jot some ideas so that you can explore this more on your own time. So we're going to talk about the pillars, the foundation of what actually creates self-empowered healing. So the first is that there is this innate intelligence that knows how to heal your body. When we did the gathering energy exercise, we talked about that which wants me to grow and prosper. And maybe you didn't feel that. Maybe you don't feel that you are intended to grow and prosper, that something's always out there to get you. I assure you that you would not be here right now if this healing intelligence was not actually already built into your body. We actually have a word for it in medicine. It's called homeostasis. And that is the multiple forces that keep your body in balance. In fact, what most people call symptoms are actually the body working to get back into balance. So for instance, let's just say you get a virus and you get a fever. The fever is actually your body's response of the immune system trying to get this virus killed. It's not actually the problem. And so often suppressing symptoms like pain or fevers or even things like runny nose or cough or wheezing can actually be limiting us from getting ourselves back into balance. Now, I'm not suggesting that you have to suffer with various things. We're going to talk about that more. But just know that this science of homeostasis, which is extensive, absolutely says that your body knows how to heal itself. And the truth is, no healing actually happens without it. You must make a commitment and trust yourself in order to have self-empowered healing. That means you have to commit to yourself and trust of yourself that you're going to follow through and do what you need to do. And trusting in a higher power can also be helpful. We'll talk about that a little more when we get to the spirit aspects. Taking personal responsibility is absolutely essential. That's the whole idea of self-empowered healing. If you aren't willing to take personal responsibility, if you want to blame something out there as limiting you, it does. If that is your belief that that thing limits you, indeed it does. And the only thing that can change that belief is you. So this is a big trick because we look and we say, well, you know, I have these lab tests or these MRIs or whatever that show this problem. How can I do something when there's actually a broken bone there, for instance? Well, people have healed themselves of very serious conditions, even including multiple spinal fractures, and they did it with their mind. So I do want you to know that taking personal responsibility actually works. Following through with it is your responsibility. One of the things we asked the question, who am I without this condition? So you actually have to reinvent a new self, somebody who doesn't have this condition. You need to be curious. What would life be like if I didn't have this condition? How, you know, it's something that in most people, they had a certain level of life before the condition, then the condition is diagnosed, and then they go forward thinking that they own that condition or that condition owns them, such as my cancer or my pain or my XYZ diagnosis, rather than them owning the healing ability inside their bodies. It's important to disconnect from the environment, the habits and beliefs that continue to feed that diagnosis. This can be very tricky. So for instance, let's just use an obvious example, such as getting lung cancer from smoking cigarettes. It would make very good sense to stop smoking cigarettes if you want to overcome that lung cancer. And so whatever environmental conditions, i.e. what you eat, how sedentary you are, habits and beliefs, if you get up every day and do those same habits, you go to the coffee maker and you get your coffee and then you sit down and read your texts and you do the same things every day, you're going to continue to generate the same. And so we have to shake that up a bit in order to actually get you to be that new person who doesn't have the health condition. And one of the most incredibly powerful and really valuable things that I have noticed about people who change is that they have self-compassion and gratitude. Gratitude is the ultimate state of the receivership. It's saying to the universe, oh, thank you. This is wonderful. I want more of this. Thank you. Anything that you can be thankful for puts you in that ability to be thankful, to receive. And self-compassion, acknowledging that you're suffering or you have suffered in whatever way. It doesn't even have to be, many of us sort of downplay our illnesses. Oh, it's not that bad. I get through and I can cope and so forth. But maybe there's other suffering that you've had, suffering from childhood events or losses in your life, whatever type of suffering, even suffering that we're all sharing together, like through the pandemic. So we're going to do a little self-compassion exercise now. So you can put down your writing instruments and so forth. And I'm going to ask you again to gather your energy so that you can feel whatever you're sitting or lying on. And again, invite you to gently close your eyes or allow them to focus on something or someone nearby that you love. Or perhaps that loved one is far away and you can see them in your mind's eye. Take a moment to gently touch with your mind a tough problem or burden that you have not been able to resolve. Just think of it lightly. Feel where this difficult energy shows up in your body. See if you can allow yourself a little bit of space between you and the challenging situation. Just a little wiggle room. If it feels too tight, ask it to back off. But just a little space so that you don't feel that it's oppressing you. Now I invite you to gently touch this spot as if you were checking how tender it is. If it's painful, allow yourself to drop your shoulders, loosen your jaw, and just acknowledge that it hurts. Go back into that wiggle room space. Let yourself be a little bit farther away from it. I invite you to acknowledge just how much pain, frustration, anger, sadness, hatred, terror this burden has caused you. How it has made you contract your life. Allow yourself to acknowledge how long this has been going on, how tired you are of carrying this burden. Just notice this without any judgment, without any judgment of energies that might be moving through you, such as tears, clenched fists, legs that want to run away. Just notice. Allow yourself to watch from the space of your wiggle room. If those energies come up, Allow them to just be there and move away from you. Now give yourself a little hug as you would comfort a child. Take 3 breaths at your own pace, and then allow your eyes to open and come back into the room. Okay. Please remember to have compassion for yourself. This allows the universe to know this needs to change. It hurts. It really hurts. And we're going to talk about how to get some more wiggle room from that. So we have several tools in our self-empowered healing toolbox. And you'll notice that I put the mind, emotion, and spirit tools before the body options. Again, this is important because I find that the body options, although we give them lots and lots of attention and time, they don't work very well if we don't have the other things lined up with them. This is why 96% of people who lose weight gain it back again, because they don't have the other things lined up. So it really is a mind game. And you'll remember those pillars of commitment and trust of yourself, taking personal responsibility, and having curiosity. Curiosity is one of the antidotes to anxiety. And often health conditions make us very anxious. Maybe anxiety is the health condition that you want to change. We live in a very stressful world that has lots of things to make us anxious. And if we can cultivate an idea of curiosity about that, again, this is this little bit of wiggle room, being curious about what could help this, being curious about what other options there are, that is a really big part of the mind game. So I mention a few things here. Scarcity mentality, I find, is one of the biggest limitations most people have. And generally, the scarcity focuses on time or money or both. And so just beginning to notice when you are coming from scarcity mentality instead of coming from abundance. Owning your power, owning that you are a powerful being. We'll talk more about that as we go along. Telling a new story about this problem instead of complaining about XYZ problem that you have, or what the doctors are saying, or the medicines that you have to take, or the side effects that you're getting from them. Is that the truth of who you are? Some of you may know the work by Byron Katie, really fantastic set of books and exercises that she does. And the first statement is that really true? So again, starting to notice what our thoughts are and then asking ourselves, is that really true? Who am I? Am I someone, despite whatever condition that I have, or think that I have, or have been told that I have? Who am I in the bigger sense? And most importantly, I find that the biggest thing that is usually a stumbling block is people don't innately feel that they are worth it, that they deserve it, that they're good enough. And that's why they allow the limitations to stop them, because the scarcity is somehow connected with the idea of not enough. And so then the scarcity of money or time says, well, I can't overcome this limitation because of this scarcity outside myself. So we're going to do a little commitment exercise here, so you can grab your paper or tablets. I would like you to focus on a favorite daydream, something that you would like to manifest in your life. That could be a new outfit that you want to buy, a new job that you want to get, a house that you want to have decorated, whatever your favorite daydream is. And thinking about that, what holds you back from achieving this? What are those stumbling blocks that stand between you and your goal? Whatever they have been or whatever you tell yourself they are, go ahead and write those down. Do these forces seem outside of yourself or inside of yourself? Is it your own lack of focus or clarity or confusion, or is it the pandemic or lack of money, etc.? And think about for a moment whether this story that you're telling yourself is actually true. Whatever this limitation is it actually true? Is it objective? Would it seem that way to everyone who looked at the problem? How much would you have to value yourself to commit to overcoming all obstacles to have this favorite dream in your life manifested? Are you deserving and worthy of having this in your life? What would you do if a genie suddenly gave you all the power you need to succeed at this? Okay, I'll invite you to come back into the room. And again, you may want to work on this a little bit more. One of the most powerful tools I have found for actually focusing your mind, because it's very, very easy to make a commitment and then we forget about it, or life happens and we get distracted. And so I use what I call mind movies, and we're going to talk about how you can actually do this. These are literally creating a visual, video, audio input that helps to reprogram neurons in your brain. We know that neurons that fire together wire together. And so the more we repeat something and practice it over and over, the more likely we are going to be to do that. And when we see and hear those things along with specific affirmations that we have decided are important that we want to do, it actually keeps us focused. It keeps us going where the goal goes. And you will be astonished at what happens when you use this to create with your mind. So I have actually created a mind movie that I use with my patients, and we're going to watch this now. It's about 5 minutes long, and allow yourself to be taken into the movie. So if you're interested in making mind movies, there's several tools out there. Some of them are free. I use Canva. A neat app that I used for this one is called Mind Movies. And I encourage you to do that. If you become one of our members that goes on a self-empowered healing journey, I actually will help you make your own particular mind movie if you would like to. So another part of mind that I'm sure you've heard about is meditation. And there's actually lots of different kinds of meditation. There's more and more evidence that this actually causes changes. However, different types of meditation produce different changes. There are actually different brain states, different brain waves, depending on what kinds you use. Any is better than none. One of the things that I help people do is focus on some of the things that actually have science behind them to show that they make a difference. So for instance, there is recently published interesting data that shows that a certain type of meditation can actually produce a protein in the blood that kills the coronavirus and stops it from entering your lung cells. That's pretty impressive with meditation. So that's one of the things that I assist people with, but there's obviously a lot of it that you can do on your own. And I encourage you to try different things to see what you like and maybe vary your routine. Sometimes you want one and sometimes you want another. So I do want to really address the self-judgment monster. This is usually the elephant in the room. Mostly when a lot of people try to do different meditation, they start to judge themselves and they criticize that they can't do it right. And so they give up. And that self-judgment extends to all kinds of changes that we're trying to make in our lives. When you were a baby and you were 12 months old and you were first starting to take steps and you fell down, if someone criticized you because you fell down or laughed at you or told you that you were wrong, you might not keep trying to get up and walk on your own. And so this often is a big stumbling block for us. And we allow other people to judge us. We allow society to judge us. We allow our workplaces to judge us. And that self-judgment monster often even turns into judging ourselves for judging, which is, of course, a vicious circle. So I bring that up because my definition of meditation is paying attention on purpose in the present moment without judgment. So anything that you do that brings you into the present moment and that you're not allowing yourself to judge yourself. Very important in the newest data and research about meditation is that we really need to connect our minds to elevated emotions, elevated states of the heart. And so whatever type of meditation that you're doing, if it just sort of stays up here and you're not actually connecting it to elevated emotions, we're going to talk about emotions more, you are really not harnessing the maximum that you can out of your meditation. So I have been researching since I had my own, what I call my healing miracle with my neck 25 years ago. And the closest that I have found to anything that reproduces what happened to me is the meditations of Dr. Joe Dispenza or Dawson Church, who does something called eco meditation. Both of these have been clinically proven with sophisticated laboratory testing like EEGs and heart rate variability to actually change what is going on in your body. Dr. Joe Dispenza had 6 fractured vertebrae in his spine, which he refused surgery for, and he healed them with his mind. And I have seen people who had stage 4 cancers, Parkinson's disease, jump up on the stage, and they now no longer have tumors showing up on their PET scans. A man with ALS ran a half marathon. This is what you can do with your mind. It does require focus, it requires dedication, and it can be done. And if you've had challenges in doing this in the past, there's lots of neat technology out there. Down in the lower right, I've pictured something called the Muse headband, which is actually neurofeedback. It's a form of EEG neurofeedback that helps you to know when you're actually in the meditative state, and can be really quite helpful. The patients that I've had that used it really felt that it was helpful. The colored brainwave states that are in the center of the screen is showing something called binaural beat technology. Probably one of the most advanced one of these is something called Holosync, which I found to be really, really helpful in jump-starting my own meditation practice. I was actually a patient that turned me on to this. So these options are out there, and I certainly encourage you to look into them and give them a try with an open mind. Again, not judging yourself until you actually can get some progress with it. So let's talk about emotions, because this is almost never something that we talk about. In fact, if it's a negative emotion, such as hatred, fear, anger, sadness, we are taught to hide these things because they're not considered nice, or we think we're a downer, or we just don't want to go there. And they've actually been measured. Emotions are stored as magnetic waveforms in smooth muscle, which is different than skeletal muscle. Smooth muscle is in your bronchi, your gut lining, and blood vessels. And so is it any wonder that emotions, for instance, raise our blood pressure, which would be those blood vessels? They can give us butterflies or other upset things going on in our guts. They can clamp down on your bronchi and create asthma. And if you've had any of those conditions, you've most likely noticed that stressful, i.e. emotional situations, actually tend to make them worse. These are all physical sensations that are associated with our subconscious mind. So subconscious often means it's not in our awareness. So we have some sort of actual physical thing going on, but we're not aware that it's there. And so we can't operate with it. We can't do anything with it because we aren't even aware that it's going on. And this is one of the things that meditation techniques can help us do, is simply become aware that these things are going on. So again, I mentioned that 85-15 rule because you're actually making 85% of your decisions on emotion, according to what the studies say, and not on all that logic that you think it is. You're using the logic to get you into the state of emotion that you want from whatever that decision is. And there's nothing wrong with that. And becoming more aware of the actual emotion gives you more power with it, power to do whatever you want with that emotion. Feed it, starve it, whichever way you want to go with it. So I want to give you permission, kind of a get out of jail free card, to feel those negative emotions. My own path has shown me that when I actually allowed myself to acknowledge how angry I was about something, or be in tremendous sadness, or really notice that I hated something. I couldn't even say that I hated something because that just was not a good Christian emotion. But when I allowed myself to get more deeply into that, and I'll just mention that art therapy is a great way to do that. Journaling can help with that, but being with that uncomfortable emotion instead of all the things that we do to distract ourselves from these things, because they are uncomfortable or they're socially unacceptable. And so we build entire lives about hiding from something because it's so painful. And one of the things that I'm going to talk more about here is shame, because shame is the essence of what is hidden. We don't want to look at shame. Being shamed by other people, shaming ourselves is often one of the worst things that people can imagine. I call it, what will other people think of me? Because you maybe don't think of it as shame, but most of us think about what other people think of me. And I make the acronym for it WhoopTom, so that I can remember, oh, there I go. I'm wondering what WhoopTom is. And that can be everything from a bad hair day to thinking you're the wrong gender, or that you live in the wrong neighborhood, or in whatever way that you are not good enough. And when we think about the effect of shame on health, I actually wrote an entire ebook about this because it has such huge implications for health. We literally have shameful body parts that we don't want anyone to look at ever. We think we're not smart enough, we're too thin, not athletic enough, or so forth. Even having a disease label, like people don't want to admit that they have something bad or scary like Lyme disease or cancer, because then you might be diseased and you can't keep up with the tribe. Or you're too ashamed of your weight, or your smoking, or your drinking habit, or whatever it is, to even go to the doctor, because that you'll feel even more shamed. Addictions of any sort are, of course, in and of themselves, we have to hide them because addictions are bad. And so when you consider the amount of healthcare and societal impact of all different kinds of addictions, just for instance, the horrifying statistic that in North Carolina last year, more people died of opiate overdoses than died of car wrecks. This is a really significant issue in our society. How about if you have downer kind of thoughts, even thoughts about harming yourself? Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. This is 100% preventable, but it's such a shameful idea. Most people won't even talk to anybody about it. There's shame of things that happened to us when we were children or in our past. There's the shame of things that we do, for instance, breaking up our marriage and not being a good enough mother or father, and so forth. So this shame issue gets translated into many, many, many different health conditions. For instance, prostate issues in men often have to do with something that the man may have been ashamed of that they did when they were younger. And maybe they don't do that anymore, or haven't even thought about it for decades, but there was some incident that they felt shamed about that. So just want to really put it out there how important emotions are. And this is one of those touch points where it's often necessary to get some professional help. And there's lots of different kinds of professional help. So it doesn't necessarily need to be psychology. And there's a lot of very interesting body-based things that allow these energies to be released from your body. Things like somatic experiencing and core energetics and other therapies. So I talk about emotions as energy in motion, because they really are like this freight train that is moving through our lives. I use that example from two excellent books by the author Mickey Singer, who wrote The Untethered Soul, and then the follow-up book, which is The Surrender Experiment. I know one person who refers to The Untethered Soul as the owner's manual for being a human. It's one of the few books I've actually read twice and really got a lot out of the second time. He talks about how energy is just moving. That's what it does. Energy must move. And often a lot of the different pain and suffering that we have in our lives is because we try to stand in front of the train and keep it from moving. And if we would just move our way from the train and observe that energy moving by, observe that pain, observe that, that discomfort in whatever way, sit with that pain, then we can allow that energy to move and transform. So let's talk a little bit about spirit. I think this is a very individual thing for everyone. I say that there's 7+ billion people in the world and 7+ billion ways to God. And so I respect whatever way that occurs for you. I put it in the context of connecting to something greater than yourself. However it is that you see that, often this is something very mystical or mysterious, and allowing yourself to be with the mystery is a potent spiritual experience. And I want to just highlight here the concept of our idealized self versus the higher self. So we often have an idealized self that is who I should be. I should feel this way. I should do these things. This is what is expected of me. That is my ideal self, the thing that I'd really like to be. That is not the same thing as your higher self, which is something that is connected to your spirit inside of you that is guiding you. And so I just draw that distinction when you're calling on your inner self to guide you in making a decision or that sort of thing, to start to notice, when am I shoulding on myself as the idealized self, and when is it actually that which wants me to grow and prosper, which is more of a wordless feeling inside of yourself that you know something wants you to succeed, wants you to be happy, wants you to be safe. So there's some excellent spiritual tools that really can impact your health. I highly, highly, highly recommend just doing a gratitude journal. Just make a habit of writing down 3 things every day to be grateful for. Some days that might not be very much, like I had 3 green lights on the way here today. That might be it. And other days you'll start to notice everything from gratitude for the people who grew your food and the bees that pollinated it, to much bigger things. Again, gratitude is how you open yourself to receiving from the universe more of that which you really want and enjoy. Mirror work is a really powerful tool. There's a wonderful book by the late Louise Hay about this, but you don't need to read a book to do it. I put this download, it's a PDF, excuse me, instructions there if you want to go to download these. But basically the idea is that you get a mirror. I like one that is small enough and close enough that you can prop it up and be close enough to really look at yourself, and just look at yourself until the person that you see in the mirror looks back at you with love. You know what this is. You know whether it is looking, whether you are looking back at yourself with love. And that isn't necessarily an easy thing. I had to do it for weeks before I was able to do that. Excuse me. There's a lot of bad hair days and zits and wrinkles and all kinds of other things staring back at you. Again, that's the self-judgment monster. Worrying is praying for what you don't want. So I highly recommend banning complaining. This is a very tricky thing to do. What I find is that when I meet friends or anybody and they say, how are things going? I start to launch into, well, this happened and that happened. And well, I'm just repeating complaining things about my life instead of actually being the person who is beyond that complaining. Creating a council of heroes. This is the homework that I'm going to give you, or one of the pieces of homework from this workshop. So a council of heroes is people that you really admire. I put Einstein's picture up here because in our council of heroes, these are people that if you had the qualities or attributes of that person, whether that's musical talent or business sense or whatever type of wisdom that you admire about that person. And I encourage you to pick, anywhere from 3 to 8 people. And sometimes you have different ones for different things. So for instance, if I was trying to solve a math problem, I would try to connect with Einstein. He was a great mathematician, right? He's a physicist. So I can connect my mind with that energy out in the field of Einstein and bring that force into my own mind to help me solve this problem. So that's simply one way you can use your council of heroes. So any kind of spiritual practice is actually being in the present moment. It doesn't make any difference what kind you look at. That's what they are all about. We obviously cannot change the past. In the future, we also don't know what's going to happen. So the most important choice that we make is whether or not we live in a friendly or unfriendly universe. This is again where curiosity comes in. We are meaning-making machines. For instance, someone loves the beach. They think that it's a beautiful, relaxing, wonderful place to be because that's the meaning that they assign to it. Someone else is scared of water. They don't know how to swim. And so they find it terrifying to be at the beach. It's the same beach. It's just the meaning that we attach to it. So most spiritual practices are really about becoming aware of what our mind is doing. In my approach to this situation, am I a victim or am I a powerful creator? Am I at cause? The thing out there is controlling me, or am I at effect? I am affecting the outcome of what I do. I want to give you a quick, easy practice that I have found tremendously life-changing. We call it the yes, thank you practice. You might have noticed this in the Mind movie. And this came about from, those little things that happen all day long that cause you to utter various expletives. Oh, heck, this happened. Oh, darn. And I'm being nice here. You might use much more powerful words than that. And recognizing that this is part of the fabric of life. And those little things that are annoying, frustrating, etc., actually might be directing us to something else. Getting a bad or scary diagnosis about something. For instance, many people who survive cancer say that it was the best thing that happened in their lives. Now, they might not have said that immediately when the diagnosis was given to them, but through the practice of overcoming it, they discovered things about themselves and they made changes and they became who they wanted to be. So if you can just start focusing your mind, instead of that expletive coming out, being able to say, yes, thank you. What else could this frustrating or annoying situation be besides the heck that I think it is? So let's talk a little bit about our more detailed body options on your self-empowered healing journey. So these are things to specifically turn on that innate intelligence, that homeostasis that I mentioned, ways to disconnect from the environment that created the disease and reinvent your new self. So I'm sure you've heard lots about these things, And we could, have whole workshops on each one. And if you want to do something like that, I certainly encourage you to contact me and we will be happy to do that. But we're going to talk about this more in the context of the principles of your self-empowered healing journey, because what is right nutrition for one person might not be the right thing for you. So I am trained in what is called functional medicine. I'm actually board certified in integrative medicine, which uses a lot of these ideas. And most of what you've heard about healthcare comes up here in these organ systems. You're used to going to specialists who look out on the leaves of the trees and they look for your signs and symptoms of what's going on. But those things are actually created at a much deeper level. And we have what we call antecedents, triggers, and mediators that are happening way before they are showing up in these organs out here. And so antecedents are things that set you up, like, for instance, genetic things. Triggers are something that get the disease going. And mediators are things that keep it going. And those might not be the same thing. But these antecedents, triggers, and mediators often are very much related to things under your control: sleep, exercise, nutrition, stress management, relationships. And so in functional medicine, we work down here looking at those innate causes of diseases rather than the effects. Again, we don't want to be at the effect of things. We want to take control of the causes. So one of the most important things has to be understanding the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system is what's running everything in the background. It controls your heart beating, your blood pressure, your digestion, your sleep. Everything that's happening in the background is the autonomic nervous system. And it has two branches: the sympathetic nervous system, which is fight or flight or freeze, like when you're running away from a lion, and the parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest and digest and repair. And unfortunately, in our modern world, most of us spend way too much time running away from the lion. And when that is turned on, when you're running away from the lion, this water buffalo is not stopping to digest. He's not stopping to have lunch. He's not stopping to take a nap. He's not stopping to lick his wounds and repair. He's just getting his butt away from the lion. That's meant to happen for very short periods of time, like less than 5 minutes. And in our modern world, with all of the incredible stresses that we have, it is happening 24/7. So we never actually get to turn on rest and digest and repair. So is it any wonder that we have an epidemic of people with sleeping problems and digestion problems? So let's talk about that in a little bit more detail. What are your root causes? Most of them are actually lifestyle choices, but you might not understand that many of them are connected. So for instance, most genes are actually under the control of our environment. It is not that you are a victim of your genes. You actually can control it. If you're having issues with sleep or weight control, they are intimately connected. Food actually affects your sleep, and you might not be thinking about that. And I'm talking about much more than just caffeine. Having energy may be because you haven't used the energy-making systems in exercise. And stress can affect all different kinds of hormones. I use this vicious circle here because often if something interferes with sleep, then we're too tired to make good food choices, or we don't have enough energy to exercise, or we feel stressed from the lack of sleep. And then that turns off innate healing. And so then more symptoms interfere with your sleep and you're stuck in this vicious circle. Now, there are many types of what are called functional medicine lab tests that can help you tune your choices. But this is why I started with the mind, emotions, and spirit, because you have to empower yourself to follow through. Doing a lab test and then not following through to make change in the long term isn't really going to help you. So you just got to do whatever we have to do. And there's many things that we can initiate without doing any testing whatsoever. So if you're looking to save money and you don't need the testing, that's great. Other people, they have to see it in 3 colors and print it on a piece of paper before they're going to believe it. So whichever kind of person you are, that's fine. And knowing that helps you know which kind of guidance to get. So I want to emphasize the really quick and easy things that everyone can do. And if you're already doing these things and it's not working for you, again, this is probably where you need some expert help. Everyone needs at least half your lean body weight in ounces daily. So for most people, this is 2 to 2.5 quarts of water a day. If you're doing exercise or cutting your lawn in the summer, it's going to be more, but that's about how much water you have to have. And that means things without caffeine, without bubbles, without sugar or sweeteners in them, because all of those things, the bubbles, caffeine, and sugars, all take water out of your body. They are diuretics. And so pure water or something that's like flavored with lemon juice, herbal teas, those are the ways to get your water in. Sleep is not optional. It has to be 7 to 8 hours a night. If you need strong drugs like benzodiazepines like Xanax and Valium to fall asleep, this is a pretty significant issue. These medications have been associated with things like memory loss, and they are not benign, and that lack of sleep needs further investigation. Elimination, something we don't talk about, again, one of those shameful subjects, but you have to poop every day, at least once a day, and ideally it's snakes, not ox. Ideal exercise is at least 30 minutes, 5 days a week of moderate exercise. You can kind of bunch some of those into fewer days if you need to, but that's about what is necessary to keep your body going. Now, if you have other issues like blood sugar or inflammation, infections, hormonal issues, toxins, that's where you're going to need to get probably someone trained in functional medicine to be able to help you with those things. So again, these are 3 non-negotiables. You have to sleep 7 to 8 hours a night. Whatever you are doing that you think is more important than sleeping isn't. And if you can't sleep in the middle of the night, and so you get up and you look at your screens and answer emails or play games on a video, so forth, that is actually sending brain waves that keep you awake. So I really recommend not having screens within the first hour before you go to bed, and definitely don't get up in the middle of the night and do them. We talked about drinking half your body weight in ounces of water and having a poop every single day. You cannot simply want to do these things with your intention. You actually have to follow through and do them. And if you're doing them, but you're, for instance, still not pooping every day, or you're still not sleeping every day, then that's where you really need to get some additional guidance. So we're back to another exercise. I want you to grab your writing tools there, because I can't means I won't. And resistance to change is the biggest, hardest part. It's often disguised. We call it all kinds of other things. What it comes down to often is, I'm not important enough to change. I'm not going to change until technology shows me how. I'm too confused. Information overload is a big issue. Or you're stuck in a vicious mind-body cycle. You have attention issues or mood issues that keep you from moving forward. So we're going to pause for just a few minutes here and let you write down some of your barriers to change that have happened when you've tried to change in the past. Okay, again, an exercise that you may want to come back to more. So let's talk about the right steps for you. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So always needing more information before you do something can be a stall. If you're confused, I definitely recommend that you consult an expert. Knowing the kind of person that you are. Are you good at self-motivation and you like to do things by yourself? Or do you really need an accountability partner? Having a coach is good, or a friend that you do something with so that you, for instance, go out and do your walk together, or you go to spin class together, or whatever that is. Are you somebody who's an experimenter and willing to see what happens when you try various things changes that you make in your diet or your sleep routine or your amount of water that you drink and so forth? Or are you somebody who has to get it right the first time, and if you don't, you're going to give up and you let that self-judgment monster get to you? I do point out that a lot of people use Dr. Google, and that is not the same as expert guidance for you, and working with a practitioner who individualizes what they do. Some people are all in and they want to get going and they just want to start and keep going forward. Other people really can only take tiny little bites of the elephant at a time, and they have to do it in gradual change. And again, it doesn't matter which kind of a person you are, it's just knowing what works for you. If you are the person who wants gradual change, you have to recognize that that may mean that the evidence of that change also shows up more slowly, which again is okay. But if you're making a tiny little dietary change and you are expecting that, you're going to lose a pound a week or whatever, and then it doesn't happen, and the self-judgment monster comes in and says, this doesn't work, I'm not good at it, I'm a failure, then that's what you will be. And so again, we may need somebody to keep us on track, that accountability partner, the expert guidance. One of the most important things that I work with patients on is tuning into their bodies and learning to read the signs of their own bodies. I find that a very, very large percentage, maybe more than 50% of the people that I see are not actually in their bodies. They're someplace else, or they just view their body as being the vehicle that takes them to wherever their mind wants to go. It's sort of a servant to them instead of actually a valuable part of the entire picture of your being. And so if you really don't remember what it felt like to be good in your body, sometimes we have to do some drastic things to help you feel that and know that, so that then you can fine tune, am I getting out of balance, and knowing when that is. So I want to give you a quick and dirty way to figure out what to eat. And this has to do with what nature shows us itself, coming directly from the way we see plants growing. So leaves are actually solar collectors. So all life on this planet comes from plants. It comes from the energy of the sun. And the only thing that knows how to grab that energy of the sun are plants. So the leaves are the most nutritious parts of the plants. And this is your dark green leafies like the Swiss chard and kale and collards and so forth. They have the most nutrition for what you're eating. Stems, things like celery, have minerals and fiber in them, which actually support our musculoskeletal system, our structure. So they are also valuable. Fruits, which is more than just like berries and apples. Most people think of fruits as something sweet, but green beans, squash, eggplant, tomatoes, those are all fruits. In fact, seeds and nuts are also fruits. Grains are the fruit of the plant. And so by the time it makes that, although those colored things are very, very nutritious and contain many things that turn on healing in our bodies, the plant has already used up some of its energy in reproduction, because that's what those fruits are for. And so it's not quite as nutritious as those dark green leafies. And grains aren't even colored. They tend to be less nutritious. And then we have the roots. So root vegetables are where the plant stores its energy. And so if you are having issues with excessive weight, you want to minimize the number of roots, because that is high energy food. And so potatoes and beets and parsnips and so forth actually have lots of carbohydrates in them. The one root that you can pretty much eat as much as you want is carrots, because they are a very low glycemic index. More colors. Again, choosing things with colors over those bland white potatoes or things that are brown like grains have more nutrition in them. Things that are closer to the way they come out of the earth and not processed are very, very important. Once they are used to make any animal product, whether that is meat, the flesh of the animal, the milk, the eggs, they are processed by that animal. And so that a significant part of that energy from the sun has already been used up. And really, really important to know is that the FDA permits 1,000 times more pesticides on animal feed than it does on things for human consumption. And so if you're going to buy organic things, spending your organic dollars on animal products is much bigger impact than even spending it on the fruits and vegetables. Things that are non-GMO are also better, because what GMO does is allow them to put 11 times more pesticides on the food. And so those are reasons to go with things that are more organic animal products, non-GMO things, looking for color, looking for less processed things. So the bottom line is that in the United States, in what we call the SAD diet, the standard American diet, 60% of calories come from just 3 foods. That's wheat, corn, and potatoes. Those are very starchy. They turn into sugar easily in the body, which is called a high glycemic index. This is why we have a weight problem, because we eat way too much of these starchy uncolorful things. And as you know, corn is processed into all kinds of things that you don't even think about. So for instance, every soda that you drink actually has high fructose corn syrup in it. And so that's a way that you're getting corn that you may not think about it. So the bottom line is eating more colorful fruits and vegetables, at least 3 to 5 servings a day. And a serving of vegetables raw is a cup, or cooked is a half a cup, and less of those starches and sugars. So how do you figure out, of all the different kinds of nutrition plans out there, which one should you do? That is actually not as hard to figure out as you might think. So you want to measure your waist to hip ratio. You need to know how much you weigh. I can't believe how many people don't have scales. You cannot change what you cannot measure. You need a scale that helps you calculate your body mass index, or BMI. If it is above 25, then you are having problems with metabolism. And so you may have issues with blood pressure. You may have issues with diabetes or pre-diabetes, issues with cholesterol and lipids. So all of those people with metabolism issues want to choose low carb types of lifestyle. If you decide to do something like keto, I strongly recommend that you get professional help with someone who actually knows how to do a ketogenic diet, because ketogenic is different than other diets. It's not simply do this or don't do that. It is actually a specific chemical change that you are trying to make in your body, and you actually have to measure that change. So paleo you can do on your own, keto needs assistance. And one of the quick and easy things I have people do in looking at their diet is actually to get some pH strips from your health food store and start to monitor your first morning urine pH. If your pH is consistently below 7 or above 8, so ideal is 7.5, then these are the things that promote cancer, osteoporosis, slow healing. Often people who have pH issues are people who do really well on vegan diets or vegetarian diets. And so we can look at that. If you have autoimmune issues or gut issues, if you have your CRP measured, C-reactive protein, I recommend this once a year with your physical. Those people probably need to do a paleo diet. There is a specific autoimmune paleo that can be quite helpful. And if you have other issues that are actually related to toxins, such as headaches, cancer, fatigue, or you've actually had exposures at your workplace or substance abuse, then we would need to talk more specifically about detoxification, which can include things like juicing and so forth. But the one thing you'll notice about all of these diets is that they have a lot less of those 3 foods, the wheat, the corn, and the potatoes. Now, in some of them, you don't have to eliminate them entirely, but we do have to eat a lot less of them. And that's what all of these nutrition plans have in common. So when you're thinking about your exercise routine, are you sort of the lean, slim, long arms and legs? That's called an ectomorph. You can do whatever you like to get you moving. Aerobic exercise is often very helpful. If you're on the other end of the scale where you tend to put on weight, particularly if it's in the middle, that belly fat kind of person, that's an endomorph. And you need both aerobics and endurance exercise, but probably also some weightlifting. The mesomorph is the one in between, in the middle, and you can go with both cardiovascular and weight training. The thing with exercise is the intensity. So high intensity interval training, HIIT, shows that doing less exercise, less time, but more intense yields much better results. And so sometimes people who are, for instance, they walk the dog for 2 miles a day. If the dog stops and does its thing, and then you get going again, or you're just ambling at a pace and you're talking on your cell phone while you're walking the dog, you're not doing enough intensity to actually get that metabolism up. People ask, should they start their diet or their exercise first? The answer is it doesn't matter. Go with whatever you want. Doing both at the same time is most likely to lead you to the faster results. Scheduling exercise should be just like you schedule a meeting. You put it on your calendar and you have to do it. Do you want a varied routine? Do you like to do the same thing every day? Again, figuring those things out for yourself. If you have significant osteoporosis risk, you've already been diagnosed with osteopenia, it's in your family, or something called sarcopenia, which is very common as we age. This is, the sort of wings that people get because they don't have the muscle mass anymore. You have to do resistance training to change those things. Aerobics is fine, it's good, but you must do that. I do want to give you some guidelines. If you are on medications, I don't recommend trying to get off of these without supervision. If you have a doctor who won't even consider reducing that because all your doctor knows how to do is give you medicines, not take them away, then you need to find a doctor who will help you to reduce them. And we are out there, I assure you. Often it does need to be done gradually, not cold turkey, particularly if it's blood pressure medication or antidepressants. And just a word about antidepressants. When I work with people about that, it can take easily 6 to 12 months to come off of them. And that there's nothing wrong with how long that takes, but we don't want to kick up symptoms. Be prepared to monitor your blood pressure or your blood sugar and so forth in order to give feedback about how to withdraw. Don't try to do more than one medication at a time, and have all those lifestyle changes in place well before you begin to try to cut out medications. Sleep is absolutely crucial. It is not optional. It needs to be scheduled just like you do everything else, because this is when all that repair happens. And if we don't get that repair, then the rest of the things aren't going to work well. The problem is, again, we're all running away from the tiger all day long. And just because you lay down in bed does not make the bills go away, or your boss's voice, or your children's needs, or whatever stresses that you have. If you are waking up a lot at night, figuring out whether this is due to physical, mental, or emotional issues is important and often needs some expert guidance there. And if you sleep 8 hours a day, but you don't feel rested, I strongly recommend consulting a functional medicine practitioner. And I put this little picture down here of the guy running away from the cupcakes, because a big reason that people don't sleep well is that they don't manage their blood sugar well. And so when we are eating a lot of those starches, the wheat, corn, and potatoes, or we're eating sugary things, and that even includes things like bananas and pineapple, that causes big spikes up and down in our blood sugar that can actually be waking us up at night. And so especially, you don't want to have those starchy, sugary bedtime snacks like ice cream or chips or that sort of thing, because they actually make the blood sugar problem worse. Stress management, of course, interferes with sleep a lot. The hard part here is really owning that you actually have more control over many stresses than you think you do. And I'm going to give you an example that may seem a bit shocking. It seemed shocking to me, about controlling what seems to be outside of ourselves versus controlling our story or reaction to it. So for instance, I was talking to somebody I haven't seen for a while and asked him how he fared during the pandemic. And he said, "Oh, my wife and I are thriving." That really struck me. Thriving in the pandemic? We all know how difficult this has been, but his choice was to choose compassion for himself and for other people over fear. And so this was how he chose to thrive in something as awful as the pandemic. That goes back to some of that Byron Katie stuff I talked about, the work. Is it actually true that I have no control over this thing? So what do you do for stress management if you are already exercising, meditating, prioritizing, and so forth, and you are still stressed out? Stress happens. It is, we do live in a really stressful world. We can't control what's going on in the Ukraine and so forth. But are you running from the stress by simply creating more distractions and not living who is authentically you? This is a deep question that you will need to consider on your own time. So I also want to address this idea of perfect lifestyle choices. We actually have a name now for a diagnosis that's called orthorexia, because some people get so tight about what they eat that it actually creates stress in and of that. So for instance, does following a nutrition plan affirm that you value yourself, or does it lead to more self-criticism, guilt, feeling deprived? If you had someone standing outside your shoulder criticizing you all day long, I didn't eat right, I'm a bad girl because I did this, I skipped exercise today and therefore I'm bad. If you feel like someone is standing there telling you all day long that you're failing, that is not going to produce the healthy lifestyle options that you want. So I really recommend, again, paying attention to that self-talk. So we talked a little bit about learning what signals well-being in your body, learning how to get those advanced messages about what might be going wrong, not waiting for the alarm bells to go off. Most medications are simply cutting the wires to the alarm bells, and they are not addressing the root causes. Allowing yourself to pay attention to things like dreams, gut feelings. We talked about people who are outside their bodies. Learning how to tune yourself is essential. I also use a lot of medical intuition and help people get to the root source of mystery symptoms. You can help to make sense of complex medical conditions, figure out what kinds of treatments you actually would be best for you, engage your own intuition, your own innate knowledge of your body, along with an expert who can help you make some of these decisions. And so I now offer medical intuition consultations if you are interested in that. So the bottom line is, do you love your life? There is actually plentiful evidence that having love in your life and simply loving your life is more important than what your blood pressure is, or your cholesterol number, or even if you smoke. And so figuring out how to love yourself and putting that love in your life every day, looking in the mirror, seeing the wrinkles and the gray hair and saying, I love you anyway. Finding out how to have love in your life is the most important thing to empower your health journey. So thank you very much for allowing me to do this presentation with you today. And please feel free to contact me or simply go to my website. You can actually make your own appointment there just by clicking on the website. I am doing telemedicine in about a dozen states. So if you have friends or other people who would like to do this, the medical intuition consultations are available from no matter where you happen to be. And I am now also starting to do affordable group coaching to help people on their self-empowered healing journey. So I wish you the best with that, and thank you again.